All right, it is 5 o'clock. So I would like to call this meeting of the Beaufort County School District Academic Committee to order. And our first order of business is to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next order of business is to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve today's agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second? Is that Mel Campbell?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of, is there any discussion? No. Okay. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Robin, are there any public comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Next thing on our agenda is approval of the February 23rd committee meeting minutes.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the February 23rd, 2022 committee meeting minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Colonel Geyer, second. All in favor? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Campbell, I didn't hear you.
Aye.
Okay. 4-0. Okay. So now to the business of the day. And Dr. Stratos is going to have her team lead us through this 3 to 5 year draft growth plan. I hope you all had a chance to look it over. There's some a couple different topics concerned in it. So, Dr. Stratos.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Robine and board members, committee members. I do appreciate this opportunity. Joining me this evening, I have Ashley Hutchinson, Nicholas Flowers, and Karen Gilbert will be part of the presentation. The 3 to 5 year lens that we'll be sharing with you will start with a brief review of initiatives that we shared with you last April. And then we'll go into a brief conversation on the impact of COVID on learning and an approach that we're taking here in the Instructional Services Department. And then we will walk through first with Ashley Hutchinson, addressing a purposeful play-based kindergarten integration model. Second, we will have Karen Gilbert present regarding career technical education and pages as to where we're looking at going and growing with our school system. And then we will land on a light discussion on work that Nicholas Flowers is initiating within our early grades with gifted and talented students, and a part discussion as to program models and potential for continuing the growth of our accelerated learners. So with that, and Mrs. Cushenberry, I appreciate if you can go to the following slide. Thank you. Thank you. So at slide 3, it is just a quick reminder that we looked at the academic school year that we set forward working with our educators and our teachers, right, through standards-based instruction. We're building the capacity this year of our instructional coaches through student-centered coaching model. We have spent some time this year significantly at developing a professional learning community model and having meetings, but within that model, developing a guidebook for Beaufort County for our school leaders, instructional coaches, and teachers to utilize doing PLCs. That work will be released in the month of May. Our final editing will be completed at the end of April. We will have PD associated with that in June. And recognize that we started a process of formative assessments. And you could tell by the graphic, that we're wrapping around the work with our executive directors, that we are not working in isolation. If we can go to slide 4. This, to many of you, will be a review from work that we brought forward. It starts on from iReady and Scholastic, right, landing to No Red Ink on the end of the graphic. But what's important to recognize that these instructional tools that we're integrating in programs, right, are all tied to what we're looking on the prior slide of working with a continuous improvement model, being tied to are our students meeting the mark, and being wrapped around the work that we've started this year with the profile of a Beaufort graduate. If we can go to slide 5. A year ago, I would share that we had just started doing this template, and we've added to it. We've added in the significant areas. If you look at from the item of Z-Space, we are that is a artificial intelligence software that's intuitive into computers that we've purchased for our MSAP schools, which are 7 schools that are tied to the Magnet Schools Assistance Program. And we are now including 3 additional schools, Bluffton L, Bluffton Middle, and Red Cedar. Actually, I was just working on finalizing that contract prior to our meeting started. We've gone through the process of having additional schools starting STEM accreditation. That STEM process, actually, we've had 3 schools this year alone get recertified in STEM, as well as in our ABC schools. We started the process of recertification for ABC schools, and all our ABC schools who are arts-based curriculum have received their re-accreditation this year. And 2 new things that have happened this year is Project Launch, which is a project lead the way pre-engineering model that actually our Instructional Services Department is supporting at 2 elementary schools within our MSAP grant. And if we look to the right side is the inclusion now. We will start the academic school year with each of our high schools having instructional coaches. If we can go to the next slide. So here it's where our mind shift has started shifting. I think yourselves as board members, us as educators, and our parents and students. You know, we reflect that during the pandemic, there were significant short-term investments that were able to enable students, right, their education. Well, it was interrupted, right? And we did short-term interruptions. Right? We did short-term fixes. We closed schools, we opened schools subject to the pandemic. We added additional tutoring. We added additional instructional materials. We extended tutoring days, but again, they were short-term. Now we're using the lens that during the post-pandemic rebuilding stage, we should consider longer-term reforms to rebuild the education system so that identified challenges are corrected and that system delivers an excellent, equitable education to all students. We go to the next slide. Thank you. In the rebuilding stage or phase, it is essential to establish our education system, an education system that embraces the whole child approach. And that is part of the work that's happening with wraparound services to our human resources department with the addition of counseling groups coming into our schools. Looking at a system that addresses the impact of the disparities of learning that resulted through the pandemic on students' capacity to learn and on teachers' ability to do their jobs. Offer flexible set of wraparound support to mitigate the impact of the pandemic. And we should be including values in education and we should value our education and educators and create a viable contingency plan for future crises. So in other words, are we also taking what we learned from the pandemic to put into place, and some of you have brought this up actually in board meetings, to put into place what we would do in the event of something else that comes forward and interrupts the learning of our children. So with the right approach, we seek to ensure that our public education system plays a critical role at preparing students and educators for the next challenges, big or small, that we may confront in the future. Next slide. So we're looking at building capacity of our educators. We're each familiar with the triangle to the left. But the goal is, as we go forward, not only doing remediation, but helping to accelerate our students so that we're able to have the lower level, data and information, knowledge and understanding but are we building our students and our teachers' capacity to transfer knowledge, right, and develop expertise of practice? Next slide. So here I have a few goals that we are working at within Instructional Services Division. One is building on the left side is building human capital amongst educators by strategically building the professional capacity of teachers and the instructional capacity of schools to respond to our students' needs. We have gone through the past 2 days training for our schools from elementary through high school in a systematic approach at looking and developing lesson plan development. The lead company is Learning Science International at LSI. It is based on work and research from Marzano, but we recognize we don't utilize the Marzano evaluation tool here, but there's research work that comes out of LSI that we've had a 2-day workshop for our educators here in the system. That's also builds upon the PLC guidebook that we will be releasing at the end of this academic school year. We recognize that capacity building is a process that over time makes it possible for the skills of teachers to be in alignment with the needs of students. Seek to correct the mismatch of skills and resources facing our schools and student learning. This is a goal that we have within ISD in order to have effective capacity within our school sites. And lastly, having a commitment to capacity building and a clear undertaking of how to carry it out in particular schools. With that, we recognize that all schools are not the same. So we have to be diverse and provide differentiation at our approach to meet the needs of both learners, the student and the adult. If you see on the right side, it gives some information regarding some of the areas of our focus. And I'll pause just, a few minutes for your review. If we go to the next slide, Mrs. Cushenberry, I have the honor and the opportunity to bring forward Ashley Hutchinson, who's a big part of the shift that we're seeking to do with our learners as well as our educators. Ms. Hutchinson, Ashley?
I am here today to talk a little bit about where our children are developmentally, and as a district, we're responsible for meeting each child where they are developmentally. And by providing a developmentally appropriate child-centered learning environment, we're going to be able to support the healthy development of all learners. And so research has shown over time that the way children learn is simply different when they're younger than when they're older. So go ahead, Robin, you're good. Okay, so on this slide, the second slide here, you have seen this before. This is a integrated, comprehensive approach to how we look at early childhood in our district. So we have early identification, we have our strong community partnerships, always focused with standard-based curriculum and instruction. We make data-driven decisions. Diversity and inclusion is always a focus. And again, keeping our families connected to our schools and to their learners and our students is a top priority as well. So in the area of early childhood, we always want to continuously focus on that high quality instruction, developmentally appropriate practice, and play-based learning. And I'm going to talk a lot this afternoon about that purposeful play-based approach and how we need to move it into our kindergarten classrooms, and how the brain works as we do that. Robin, go ahead. Thank you. So you may have heard me say this before, but I think it's always important to keep in mind that 90% of a child's brain development happens before the age of 5. And I stood at the podium before and said that happens before they even hit our door. That's before they are even required to be in school in South Carolina. So we have to keep in mind that in the state of South Carolina, kindergarten is still not mandatory. It is a parent choice. We have seen over the last couple of years a mixture of children choosing to delay the start of kindergarten. So instead of starting at 5 years old, they're starting at 6 years old. Their families are trying to give their children that extra year for that extra social emotional boost, especially if their child has a late birthday. So as we're looking at 90% of a child's brain development happens before the age of 5, All of that brain development happens through a process of play. So they're learning all sorts of different things through manipulating objects, holding objects for the first time, moving them around, and going through, if they're in a childcare center, from center to center, whether it's dramatic play, blocks, the math center, and being able to hold those tangible items, manipulate them, and build on the foundation of their past experiences. So as a district, we need to be able to, as children enter our doors on day one, kindergarten being that first day, we need to help children be able to develop that foster the love of learning. Go ahead, Robin. So as we look at taking a developmentally appropriate play-based approach to kindergarten, keeping in mind that always focused on our standard-based instruction. So our standards are still at the forefront. We're not sending our children for a free play type learning environment. We're sending them into a guided learning environment. So the teacher often is still directing, but allowing for child-led activities. So in this approach, purposefully and intentionally planned lessons are a key focus. So our teachers have to be able to understand that our children are going to be moving freely throughout the classroom to different centers. But every time they go to one of those centers, there's a purpose and a plan, and it's intentional of why the teacher has sent them to that learning center. It provides our students active hands-on learning experiences for all diverse learning styles, integrates across multiple developmental domains and subject areas, allows adequate time for center child activities, and then also purposeful play allows for differentiation and for the teacher to meet the child where they are developmentally. This is a key piece right now and where we are as a nation and as a country and as a county, to be really, because we are going to have children entering our doors that have never been in a school program before. This population is still the population that under 5 years old, we still can't vaccinate. So our parents are choosing to keep their children home versus in a childcare center or a preschool. And keep in mind, more than half of the children coming in still have had no prior preschool experience. So very key when we move that child into a kindergarten program, that we still are able to give those children the learning through play concept so they're able to master foundations and build upon that. Robin, you can go ahead to the next slide. So when we talk about what are children learning through play, so we talk about cognitive skills, we talk about foundational understanding. Play is the natural way children learn. And I know when we say play, we think of we're just sending our children into a classroom with other children and they're going to play all day. But if you take a look at the picture, this group of children right here are actually building letters with Play-Doh. So they're able to feel the letter, the texture of it. It's a sensory type activity, but they're also building phonics skills, letter recognition, and they're able to physically manipulate that letter, which builds a solid foundation of letter recognition and phonemic awareness, and so on, sound recognition. So as we keep in mind, creating resilient, confident learners allows for this to happen during this time of moving throughout the classroom and learning through centers. As you know, throughout this time, as we're coming in off of the pandemic here, social emotional development is going to be something that we have to keep a focus on. Learning through play concept naturally allows that to happen as we go through this when we're looking at this approach. Okay, go ahead, Rob, thank you. So children develop early reading, vocabulary, writing, speaking, and listening skills by seeing themselves as readers and writers. So when we send children to the dramatic play center, you may, as a teacher in your kindergarten classroom, have your dramatic play center set up like a restaurant. and they're setting the dinner table for 4 people to come to your restaurant. They're creating menus and they're writing out menus of what they're going to serve for dinner. They're adding price tags to their menu item. So if you're going to order chicken for dinner, you might have to pay $5 for the chicken for dinner. But again, they're manipulating the money and the cash register. They're setting up those tables. They're writing out menus. They're seeing environmental print. So you're seeing the Cheerios box and the Cracker Jacks box, all of those things that they can easily recognize, so that they believe in themselves as readers and writers. So we know that as research shows, between 1998 and 2010, the percentage of dramatic play and other play-based centers have dropped from 90% to about 58% in kindergarten classrooms. So over half of our kindergarten classrooms across the nation have seen a dramatic decrease in the number of play-based learning centers in classrooms. So we as a district need to get back to providing those play-based learning opportunities for our children. Go ahead, Robin. So during the child-led activities, children learn to interact with others. They talk, they collaborate, they problem solve. They're building their language skills and of course, their social emotional skills. Children struggle. Oh, I'm going to go back up one more time. Sorry. Children can struggle easily with that mathematical concept because they're abstract. Those concepts become easier to understand when you're using them through a play concept. So if you have to think about the child who's never had a preschool or a school experience prior to kindergarten, if you've never played in the block center and felt the wooden blocks and manipulated them and saw that some were triangles and some were rectangles and how they fit together and how they don't fit together, it's very difficult to understand that math concept in an abstract way if I've never experienced it with a hands-on learning experience. Robin, I think we're good. Go ahead. So as a school district, this is something I created that we need to keep. This was how we would funnel this approach through our kindergarten classrooms. So we would have a key focus on standard-based instruction. Absolutely, that would still be a focus area in the forefront. We also have the curriculum and our progress monitoring would play a vital role in it. The classroom learning environment, we have to prepare our kindergarten classrooms for a play-based learning approach. So what that means is that the classroom has the opportunity for children to move freely throughout those centers, and that the teachers have the resources they need to use, for instance, manipulatives, to use those throughout the day so we can build those play experiences. A key focus would also be intentional planning. Our teachers have to plan in order for this organized chaos, as we say in the early childhood world, to function properly. All funneled through purposeful play experiences. You then create the mathematical thinker. You definitely strengthen social emotional skills, literacy and language, cognitive development, and as well as their physical development. As a direct result for this, we create a child that is now successful in kindergarten and beyond. So I put a few slides, research points on here. This first article actually just came out on Friday. So if you have a few minutes to read it, it's an excellent article where the reports now find that children learn more from guided play than they do from direct instruction. So great article. And then I listed 2 other reference points where you can just have if you have a few minutes, you can educate yourself on this concept and what it would look like in some of our classrooms.
Good afternoon, board members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
So is it possible, Mrs. Cushenberry and Karen, if we could just pause a moment? if there are any questions for Ashley at this time.
Sure. I'll start. I have a question, Ashley. I guess based on my experience, I think that purposeful play to me is the same as a well-structured learning center for the children. I think that the trap that we don't want to fall into is where what our kindergartens used to look like years ago, where the kids just played all day and there wasn't any structure to the play. So I think this is great. You've got the the intentional planning piece, I think, is going to be really important here, so that the centers, the learning centers, which we're now calling purposeful play experiences, are really, planned well, so that they aren't, they aren't just the children playing and the teacher sitting at a desk unengaged. So.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
So I want to make sure, yes, and clarify, you are absolutely right. This is an experience where children are going to be, there is a reason why were sent to the center. It's not that gone are the days of the pumpkins and the apples and, that kind of concept of what we thought kindergarten used to be years ago. And I certainly understand where you're coming from. This approach that I want us to focus on is exactly what you just said, standards-based, but purposeful play. So we've taken the standard, we have unpacked it and figured out what we want the children to know and learn from that standard, and integrated it into learning centers and manipulatives and all sorts of experiences that children do through play. So yes, you're correct.
And
Go ahead.
if I could just build at that, if we recognize in the earliest slide 3, that our work together now is tied with working with our executive directors as well, that standard-based instruction is one of the key components to instructional practice for us. The continuous improvement model is not something that is going to be pushed aside, because that is also tied into kindergarten as well, because these are foundational critical years. And that we also recognize is, as I had later on, and I want to say it was slide 9, that the capacity building of the educators, including the administrators, of expectation and practice is critical. The research shows, Mrs. Robine, that although an academic model to kindergarten and pre-K does give immediate growth, on a continual basis, looking at children who've gone on an academic model versus purposeful play base, there is a decrease in time and performance of students and actually outcome of attendance and creativity. Some of these articles, and the article from Harvard will bring that up as well on resilience. So I just wanted to share that as well, and I do apologize for cutting in.
Thank you. From my experience, I think some of my, I think back to my stellar kindergarten teachers. The kids thought they were playing all day. Mm-hmm. They were engaged in real activities, but they just thought, if you asked them what they did, they would say, "Oh, I'm playing," or if you visited them in a center. Mel Campbell.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of concerns with this program. Primarily, how are we going to assure that the kindergarten children are prepared to play properly? And is there anything in place to get them at that speed? pre-kindergarten program, etc., or just literature, just language being passed out to these parents of kindergarten children or pre-kindergarten children, so that they are prepared for what the child will reach when they get into the kindergarten classes. And that's one concern. The other concern is, I think Ashley said that this type of education format has dwindled quite a bit over the last years, and we're trying to get back to it. Is there research that maps particularly our community, our county, and places that have utilized this process, and how growth has occurred over time versus, what Beaufort County might be expecting? Those are my concerns, and primarily it's the same thing I've always said. You're going to get the same kind of children you're going to get who can't play properly either in kindergarten. Unless we dig down deeper, it's going to be the same results. So how are we going to assure that they're going to be able to play according to the rules?
So you are absolutely right. We as a district still receive children that quite aren't ready for kindergarten. So, keeping in mind what happens in the Office of Early Childhood from birth to 5. So we start out with the traveling preschool bus. We're out in the community capturing families and educating them on the profile of the ready kindergartner, which is has been put out by the state. So all of our families are being connected. We're trying to reach everyone. We're going into the mobile home parks. We're going into the subsidized housing complexes, churches, neighborhoods, where we can reach children and their parents to educate them. So after the traveling preschool bus, if you need a home visitation program, we still have the parent educators in the district who are also helping our teen parents and our grandparents raising grandchildren and our foster care with parenting skills, and of course, building on those school readiness skills. Funneling them into Child Find for their screening. So everyone, we're trying to capture everybody for a developmental screening so we can put those interventions in place before they get to kindergarten. And then also, our pre-kindergarten program is still serving. We have a capacity to serve around 983 children per year. The children that we're serving in our pre-kindergarten programs are still developmentally falling below the 50th percentile and or receiving a score of 40 or higher on the risk factor score to be eligible for a pre-kindergarten program. Now, we always, like I said earlier in the presentation, the pandemic has created groups of children who have not had these experiences because moms and dads are keeping them home. So through this purposeful play experience, teachers are able to differentiate learning a lot easier by grouping children together. So if you have a group of children who are not quite ready to play in the block center, that's a teachable moment for us. So I can tell you right off the bat who has had blocks in their home and who have not had blocks in their home. And as a teacher, I need to focus on the children who have never built with blocks, because that's a key math concept that they're going to have to learn and have to know. And so while the other children are playing in the writing center, building menus for their restaurant, I might be, as a teacher in the math block area, teaching them how to properly use the materials that have been given to them. There are some times where we are going to have to teach children how to play. You absolutely have a point.
My concern actually is that, again, we are starting at a late date educating. I mean, if we're teaching them how to play now in the kindergarten when they should full well understand the rules, what can we do? You mentioned 983 students.
Yes.
What's the real number? What's possible? How are we restricted to those numbers? And I don't expect you to answer these questions now. I just
Sure.
Passing it out there. And what kind of database do we have on parent preschoolers? Are we touching them all? I mean, that mobile book read or book find, child find process, to me, is a hit and miss. I mean, do we really know how many we have out there, who they are, and whether or not they have been contacted? That's some concern that I've had and I've still
Sure.
got, and I don't see this answering those concerns. Thank you.
Colonel Geyer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ashley, great briefing. I like it, but there's something that bothers me. Do we have a teacher toolbox to give our teachers that have the activities, the play activities kind of laid out, the equipment that they need to do that? Do they have videos that they can watch, demonstrations on how it's done? I was at Robert Small's when they showed me the bedtime in a box that they're giving to all the kindergarten kids. I want to give it to all the parents and kindergarten kids. And basically, that's a little toolbox for parents. It's got a toy, it's got games, it's got songs, it's got things that parents can use to teach those children at the home. Do our teachers have this kind of stuff and training to be able to do this? We can say we're going to have a purposeful play and figure it out. That's not going to work. You've got to give tools. You've got to realize that social emotional learning is structured. It is structured. It has to be structured, and you have to have a starting point. You have to have evaluations along the line, and the teachers have to have the toolbox to know and to evaluate and to adjust, because as you know, everybody's brain isn't at 90%, or its different parts are started at 90%. So it's an individual thing. And so you've got to have a pretty good toolbox to be able to adapt to the different kids. And so what are you going to give our kindergarten teachers to accomplish this?
So we are currently looking at a couple different curriculums. So what I'm doing after this presentation next week, our committee, we will have a purposeful play kindergarten committee, standing committee at the district that will go create the implementation plan of what this will look like over the next several years. That'll include lots of professional development for our teachers. Because this is a philosophy mind shift change that we are going to focus on as a district. So we are going to have to, like you said, prepare our kindergarten classrooms for a play-based learning approach. And what that means is we are going to have to put the resources in place and the manipulatives and the furniture, all of those things. The furniture in a kindergarten classroom plays a vital role in how the children move throughout the classroom. And so we're prepared as a district to take that on. The curriculum and the progress monitoring part. The curriculum that we're going to look at the committee will look at a couple different curriculums and to determine which one would be a best fit for our district. The curriculum will allow for that play-based learning approach to occur and assist and guide the teacher on how to implement in her classroom. The progress monitoring tool, along with the curriculum, will require it to be differentiated for multiple different learning abilities and styles in the classroom. So if we have our early childhood special education students pushing into a play-based kindergarten program, we'll need to use a differentiated model in order to accommodate for their abilities. Same with any other child in the kindergarten classroom. And so there are curriculums out there and progress monitoring tools out there that will assist with this purposeful play-based approach that we would need to implement in our district.
I have to go back to the hands. Colonel Geyer, do you have a follow-up question?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Ashley, I just have one more comment. As a, person who's worked in elementary schools for a very long time, I've got to believe that we have some teachers that have been using play-based learning, and they simply, let's take the letter formation one.
Mhm.
Teachers have been doing stuff like that with clay or with glitter,
And
with soap, with shaving cream for years, right?
Yes.
So those are the types of things that I would think that just by, getting together, those would be some things that could be identified as what we're talking about as play-based learning, what it's trying to teach, and then as a start to build that toolbox.
Correct. We, that you are absolutely right. There are teachers in our district and across the nation that build this naturally into their schedules every day and into their classroom. What we have seen, because research has shown and what we've seen is that we have decreased the number of those opportunities over the last several years. What we want to do as a district is move in the direction of that this approach is where we are and what we look for in classrooms. What we want to train our administrators what to look for when they go in the building. So that'll be part of the plan, is not only professional development for our teachers, but professional development for our coaches and our administrators, so that everyone in our district has the same mindset of that we are going to teach kindergarten at a developmentally appropriate level through learning through play.
One more and then Mel. So one of the things that's going to come up, and I'm sure you will be, you already have this, are the children that arrive to kindergarten that have exceptional skills, and their parents, rightfully so, demand are a little bit more, have higher expectations for a meatier curriculum. Have you, you talked about differentiated. Is that in here?
Yes. So our children that are already, on grade level or above grade level coming into kindergarten classroom, that's where that ability grouping comes in. Small group instruction happens where the teacher and the instructional paraprofessional, and this is a key piece that I hadn't mentioned yet, but that instructional paraprofessional plays a vital role in this as well. So simultaneously, small groups are happening with the instructional assistant and the teacher. Children are in their learning centers with child-led activities. Curriculums that take this purposeful play-based approach are differentiated within themselves, so that the teacher has that quick glance to say, okay, I have this small group coming to me, and they're at this level, at this skill level. And then, my next small group is at this level, and I need to adjust this for their needs and abilities. So yes, our goal is to get to have a curriculum that allows for that high learner and to continue that high learner in growth.
Great, thanks. Mr. Mel Campbell?
Yeah, I know I mentioned something about the preschoolers. Now I'm concerned with the integration into the first grade from this play-based learning. I mean, if you're going to go back to traditional structure in the first grade, what's the jury say about that? What's the research in terms of play-based to traditional, or are we shifting the first grade also incrementally so that they can accept these play-based students in the first grade? Because that is a concern, and what I'm hearing, I'm very, concerned about this program.
Sure. Some of the research, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Some of the research that I included in the last slide there incorporates how school districts are taking a different approach in first grade up to the age of 8. So nationwide, early childhood now incorporates children up birth through 8 years old. So this purposeful play experience in kindergarten often transitions towards around this time in the school year, and to prep our children for first, second, and beyond, a different model. But there are school districts that are, like you just mentioned, changing the focus of first grade and beyond to incorporate more hands-on, child-led, purposeful play activities. And we will, in Dr. Stratus and ISD team will look at that as we, progress through this process. And I'm assuming, I would talk with Dr. Stratus about making adjustments if we need to.
Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Mrs. Robine, if I may just build
Yes.
a quick comment. So we recognize that earlier on slide 8, right, that our goal is to shift the mindset of not just reading data, not just understanding informational, right, but being able to grow larger in the concept of knowledge building, understanding, right, transference of knowledge, okay, and creating experts. This is something that's going to happen in a phase of building that capacity shift of our educators, because one thing that has definitely happened through the pandemic is that students have recognized that I can pull a lot of information. I don't care what grade. Kids know how to just pull the entry level information. So the goal is to get our educators as well to get deeper at practice and for our students to become better experts within content. Standards would not be put to the side. We recognize grading still exists. But to the core of this, we're saying that the standards will still be addressed. There'll be a continuum of standards throughout all experience of our children, but we're integrating alternate models. So it's almost a total physical response. If you're familiar with the work of Sylvia Ashton Warner, TPR, there, as you're acquiring knowledge or skill set, the touching, the kinesthetic, the tactile component of learning actually pushes greater language development. So I just wanted to share those few comments.
Thank you. Colonel Geyer?
Thank you. Ashley, when you talked about differentiating learning within the classroom, a warning came to mind. There will be some people that will say, well, let's take all the kids that had preschool and put them in the same class, and those that didn't have preschool in a different class. That's a slippery slope. Don't want that. When I go to student advisory committees, and one of the questions Dr. Rodriguez asks our seniors and juniors and sophomores, how many of you are in advanced placement courses? And most of them put their hands up. How many of you have been in advanced placement courses since you were in grade school? Most of them put their hands up. That's not good. I mean, it's good that they have advanced placement, but it's not good that they're in the same cohorts throughout school. And when you ask them, well, that's the way it's been ever since grade school. That's not what we want. We can't have that kind of stratification. We need to have a balanced, diverse classroom in kindergarten and through grade school, I believe. And you can use those children that are a little advanced to help those that are not, instead of separating them and say, well, you're the smart ones and you're the not so smart. Please, 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 please make sure that doesn't happen.
Can I comment on that?
Okay.
Sure.
So this purposeful play experience. So currently in our kindergarten classes, we allow mixed ability levels. So we a lot of our schools do readiness screeners with their children, so we know where they are coming in. But in this play-based learning environment, when you're mixing ability levels throughout the classroom, so if you have a high learner or an advanced learner in the block center with a child who has never been in the block center before, the child who is teaching the other child how to manipulate those blocks, how to build a tower, how they fit the Legos together, how to write a menu in dramatic play. So this allows for learners to learn from each other and through each other. So I actually agree with your comment wholeheartedly. And with this approach allows for more of our students to be learning together with each other, and less dividing them into, like you just talked about, different groups.
Mr. Stribinger.
Thank you, Kathy. Just want to echo what Colonel Geyer said. I'm fairly familiar with the disastrous effects of the labeling theory, but it sounds like you're aware of that and you're dealing with it. Back when I was in school, that was very popular. You'd get labeled early. And, as the saying goes, I lived up to my teacher's expectations.
Yep.
So I think we're aware of that, but it sounds like you're fully aware. My question is, roughly, what is the timeline from where we are today to a significant implementation? Because I realize we're turning a big ship here. Mm-hmm. And I know it's going to take time, but I'm just trying to get in my mind, a rough timeline. Are we talking 4 or 5 years before we have implementation? I mean, that's the first thing that came to my mind, but I have no idea what I'm talking about. So I'm looking to you to give me just a rough timeline.
Sure. We are looking at taking this in small chunks. As I said before, this is a pretty big mind shift change for some of our administrators, some of our teachers, and you want to bring that in a slow process. So we're looking at doing a pilot at some of our schools with the idea of a 1 to 3 year implementation. And by year 3, we are rocking and rolling, and it's cooking and marinating, and we're seeing some results from this. I've stood before y'all before, early childhood, when you invest in early childhood, you don't often see the results super fast. We wait till our 3rd grade test scores come into play, but we will have a process and a transition over time, and as the pilot grows, it would be a full implementation throughout the district within the 3 to 7 years. I do want to add something that I haven't mentioned. I want to make sure that we understand that this fully aligns with also our Birth to 5 plan in early childhood with Beaufort County School District, but it also aligns with our Head Start and early Head Start partnership as well. So, I've talked with our partners about this. They're on board with, like Mr. Campbell said earlier, preparing our children for this concept. And Head Start is going to be able to help us with this as well.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. No more hands. So, Ms. Gilbert. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, board members. I want to thank you so much, you and Dr. Stratos, for including career and tech ed through this 3 to 5 year lens. This is actually going to be a continued conversation from the good feedback that you provided on how are we going to address advanced technologies and what does that look like in a CTE planning programmatic areas. And also continued collaboration with our other departments such as IT, facilities, and then of course, including our schools and community as to making sure that we're on par with the principles of mission and vision. And then you will be receiving within the next couple of months, we have our comprehensive local needs assessment. So that's another driver of these goals. This was started 2 years ago. It's a requirement by the federal's Perkins grant, and that we collaborate with by region to look at areas for local labor market needs. How are we offering programs that are in size, scope, and quality to address that? How are we using recruitment and retention of teachers? There'll be a huge focus this next 2-year cycle on post-secondary options, as well as how are we serving all students, from the college bound to even students with special needs. So that's called the comprehensive local needs. I'm working with my other CT colleagues at Beaufort, Jasper, Hampton, and Colleton, as well as Dr. LaVecchio is on the team as well. So we'll be excited to share the results of that. So from those drivers, we're looking at 5 major goals that we feel like are measurable. We've already have a baseline established. So we want to make sure that we're going to have things in place that's going to introduce students to those emerging technologies that we had discussed in an earlier presentation, such as AI, cybersecurity. We want to make sure that we here in the Low Country, that we're aligning what we offer and how students are graduating that's going to meet critical industry needs, such as healthcare and IT. Hospitality and tourism for this area, that's a given that we'll continue to support. We also want to look at how do we incorporate common employability skills across all of our content areas. That's through work-based learning, apprenticeships, formal and informal internships, as well as in the classroom. How are we going to increase the number of students who complete a pathway? Why is that important? Because it says that our students, when they leave us, they have a plan in place, and that they have something that they market themselves, such as an industry credential, to move forward. And then lastly, we want to make sure that do we have transitions in place that's going to help our students to move beyond high school for more advanced training, whether it's the military or it's a 1 or 2 year degree, as well as a 4-year. So we think these are 5 excellent goals. It's measurable, and we have baseline data. And so in moving forward, next slide, please. We're going to approach this geographically. So we decided that we would look at it in terms of 5 geographical clusters. We felt like this would be helpful to be more intentional with our planning and resources, as well as to have a more strategic goal setting. So we're looking at a Battery Creek Beaufort cluster. And what does that mean for those feeder schools and the high schools? Also looking at the Well Branch cluster with their already successful early college model. Looking at our Bluffton May River cluster, and then our Hilton Head Island cluster. And Dr. LaVecchio and I continue to collaborate on a regular basis as to the excellent options that they offer at Beaufort Jasper Career Center, and to make sure that we are in alignment together as we promote these options for our students. So the first thing that we wanted to do is to establish some common expectations at all middle and high schools. So for all high schools, we hope that over the next 3 to 5 years, you see career pathways that offer some type of business management. It can look a little differently from school to school, but if they're offering some entrepreneurship, some accounting, some personal finance, business finance, some marketing, hospitality and tourism marketing, something that's going to help those students in the front of the house, back of the house, back office applications. There's still many viable careers and jobs for that. So we feel like all schools need to offer something within those areas. The other thing is obviously computer science. We want that to be, as we had mentioned in a prior meeting, to have a K-12 focus. And I liked what Ashley said about being able to increase kids' critical thinking skills early on, because that's going to build that computer science computational thinking. So we want in all high schools to have some type of IT, computer science focus. And I took your good feedback. We want to make sure that it's different levels for whatever that student's going to move into as far as a career. Health sciences is huge. We're almost there. We definitely we'll talk about when we go to Hilton Head slide that we want to bring that into the Hilton Head Island cluster. And then, of course, we want to make sure that all of our schools have work-based learning opportunities as well as a very strong CTE dual enrollment component. So let's break it down by the different clusters. Next slide, please. So for our middle grades, and how I set this up, I formatted what as our current status based on what we offer or the focus areas, our current enrollments, and our current certified teachers. And then where do we look at for future needs? So right now we're looking at 3 major areas. For middle schools, we want to, and this is grades 6 through 8 at all 8 middle schools, recognizing that we have 2 K-8, but career and tech ed would be focusing on the 6 through 8 grade levels. We want career exploration courses. There is a state approved course, which is awesome, or integration of very specific activities that meet certain standards so that students come away from their 8th grade ready to do that IGP plan and process. We implemented this year virtual job shadowing, had excellent feedback from that. If you haven't seen the video, we'll be glad to share that with you where it highlights several of our students and teachers. So that's going well. The other area that we don't offer at all middle schools that we'd like to push over the next few years is a digital literacy focus and a financial literacy focus. The digital literacy to address those K-12 computer science standards, as well as a financial literacy as to helping kids early on. We hear so many parents as well as employers talk about if they just know how to understand what credit is and manage a budget. And I don't think middle grades is too young to begin that, but I'll appreciate your feedback. So, and then obviously STEM related, anything science, technology, engineering, mathematics. We use for our platform Project Lead the Way Gateway. I'm excited that Dr. Stratus, their ISD is supporting Project Lead the Way launch to expand in other schools beyond River Ridge. I think that'll be an excellent segue into what they can take at the middle grades. Are we there yet as far as consistency with all of our middle schools? No, but that's one of the areas we want to work on. So we have currently 3,247 enrollments, and we have 12 teachers spread out across 8 middle schools that are CTE certified that instruct one or more of those courses. So for future needs, really don't want to change up those focus areas. We just want to elevate them by increasing more offerings at most of our middle schools. There's a couple they have a wide array of offerings, but we could do better at some of our other schools. But in order to do that, we need to look at how do we share staffing either between the high school and the middle school, or perhaps increasing the staffing so that more of our middle school CT teachers are computer science certified and or Project Lead the Way certified. And then as we had talked about earlier, what do those learning spaces look like so that we can, excuse me, I am coming off of a major cold.
It's okay.
Karen, take your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was out for a few days, subject to a significant sinus infection, and
So my apologies.
That's
You okay?
all right. Yeah.
So anyway, we would look at redesigning those spaces. Next slide, please. Great. So for our Battery Creek Beaufort cluster, we currently
Karen, may I make a suggestion?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we want to take I could cross over to Mr. Flowers. Are you okay?
I don't think that'll help.
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
Okay.
We have, as you can see on the left, we have the total number of career clusters. Our specialty areas for Battery Creek and Beaufort. We're proud of our our healthcare, welding, our aviation and culinary. You can see the total enrollments that we have, as well as, excuse me, the number of teachers. For future needs, my apologies, I am so sorry.
I feel so bad for you.
Yeah. Karen, do you want? Yeah.
David's hands up.
I'm going to catch my
David?
breath here in a second. So we have a total number of 26 teachers for that cluster. What we are looking at in the future is just increasing slightly up to 19. We're excited to look at adding global logistics at Battery Creek High School. The principal is very much on board with that. We feel like there's definitely a need that's within our region that's coming up with the Jasperport as well as Charleston. We also want the capability to bring in a 2-teacher program for culinary at Battery Creek. With the community support from the first referendum, they've had some extensive renovation, modernization over at Battery Creek, so that's helping. At Beaufort High School, with the MSAP grant, we are excited to increase healthcare opportunities. So we're looking at even adding an LPN program on down the road to help meet these critical healthcare needs, as well as we have had a request really now for 2 years. They are very interested in partnering with the local firefighter organizations and would like to add a firefighter program at Beaufort High School, similar to what we have at Bluffton High School. So we think these are very doable programs. I put what would be some facilities needs that could be feasible. And again, this is in collaboration with our facilities team. So you have those listed there. And then either we look at increasing CTE staffing or again, shifting. Do we need as many business teachers? If we do some shifting down to the middle grades and so on. Next slide, please. If you'll go back to Well Branch, thank you. So for Well Branch, we currently have 8 career pathways. Of those, our specialty areas over there are information tech and healthcare. We have a strong nurse aid program and a strong sports medicine program. There's currently 539 enrollments and we have 7 certified teachers. What we would like to do as we move forward is to increase that with an extra pathway. It'll actually be 2 if we combine one. We have a pending retirement in our public safety law enforcement. It is public now. And so with an IT focus, we are looking at transitioning public safety law enforcement to potential public safety computer forensics. If any of you had an opportunity to participate in the Cyber Summit, it was very interesting to hear from Notre Dame and how they were aligning their liberal arts program with their computer forensics program there. And it was an excellent way and a good pool of students to pull from for that career path. The principal there is excited. She would like to add an online pharmacy tech so that as our students go through healthcare and they take either the nurse aid or they take a sports medicine path, or they can try for the online pharmacy tech when they become a senior. And then lastly, we wanted to have some additional hands-on activities, but that would align with the early college model. So we're looking at a sports and nutrition pathway that would complement the sports medicine. It also complement a foods and dietitian pathway and needs, for example, at a hospital or in a long-term care facility. And then you see some projected needs as far as space, as well as for teachers. Next slide, please. For our Bluffton May River cluster, again, we're very proud of where we're at. There's 16 career clusters there now. We have the welding automotive at May River that also is in collaboration with ACE. Both schools have engineering, healthcare, and a public safety focus. Firefighters at Bluffton, law enforcement is at May River. You see the total enrollments there, almost 4,000, and we have 30 teachers right now between the two schools that are certified in one or more areas. What we're looking at is just increasing slightly. We're excited. I know Mr. Bornschauer, his team, and Ralph Latai, they have been working very hard to add a JROTC pathway. I have an exciting announcement to share with you in just a minute when we get to the JROT slide. So hopefully you'll hear more development about that. We would, just like at Beaufort High, we would like to expand the LPN program at May River because the facility space is there. Bluffton High already has a very strong sports medicine program, very strong internships with the sports med there. For Bluffton, we are looking at either an internal IT cyber academy approach, or perhaps on down the road if a building could accommodate that. And then for the firefighter, the teacher is very interested in adding drone tech. That is a huge area that he can help certify the students. And it's also part of the South Carolina Fire Academy standards. It would also help with the civil engineering program as well. As far as facilities needs, obviously, if we look at on down the road, we'd want to expand or add on with May River to have a JRTC and just add some of those advanced welding and auto within those advanced technologies. We want to modernize the foods lab at Bluffton. Bluffton has a strong foods and nutrition program. They just have an old home ec kitchen. So it's already on the facilities master plan. And so they're very much aware of that and are working toward that. And then obviously looking at developing the space for the IT. In the long run, whether we shift teachers or not, we would look at needing an additional 5 teachers or shifting with those existing 30. And then last but not least, the next one slide, please. For our Hilton Head cluster, we currently have 7 pathways. Obviously, the main focus there now, they're doing excellent jobs with culinary and hospitality. They have close to 1,400 CTE enrollments, and they have 9 certified teachers. So we would really like to focus on Hilton Head in moving forward. We know that they're landlocked right now, but I think there's some things we can do in the short term as well as the long term. If we increase to 10 pathways, again, we want to look at an IT cyber focus there. We want to add on down the road an aviation drone tech program with the, we have spoken in the past with representatives from the airport, and there is a lot of opportunity for partnership there, as well as using that focus to teach STEM and offering some great hands-on applications similar to what we're doing at Battery Creek. And then, of course, we've got to add a healthcare pathway. There's so many opportunities that we can partner just there on the island to help that our students could take advantage of. And then you see what would that look like as far as facilities and additional teachers. Next slide, please. So I like the way Dr. Stratos set up these presentations, minus my coughing fit. it's all about supporting student transitions. And how are we doing that strategically? And I applaud this board. You know, I think we've come a long way in asking the right questions on how are we getting students from point A to point B. Career and tech ed, you know, we could say we're good. Let's just do well with what we have. I know that business and industry often change at the speed of light. So if we want to stay viable in these major industries and to help students to be able to move into something that's going to be able to support themselves and a family, then, you know, staying on top of this, I think will benefit our district. So give or take the existing 86 teachers that we have, we would be looking at 14 over the next 3 to 5 year period, 5 at the middle school, or shifting, as I said, in some respects. I would also, Dr. Strass and I talked about this, if we're going to have a major priority on healthcare and IT, it'll help to look at having some additional support to work with curriculum instruction, professional development, those business and industry partnerships. And then we've talked about this before, what incentives are there in the career and tech ed world to help recruit and retain teachers in those specialty areas, particularly IT, healthcare, and I'm going to add culinary and trades in with that. It's tough to get, even of Dr. Levesque and I have discussed this, automotive teacher, welding, you know, they can make so much more out in the industry. So how can we, or look outside the box to help them move in? Next slide, please. So I took the excellent feedback from the prior board when we were going through the first bond referendum process. I learned a lot, and I totally agree that value of partnerships is so important. Relationship. And so I'm proud of our community. I think we have such a strong support of options for students to include maybe not always going to that four-year university path. And so I'm proud to say that when we start getting into the next steps and doing the surveys and working with the schools, which that's part of this comprehensive local needs assessment process, that we already have a growing list of business and industry partners, community, faith-based, military, and of course our post-secondary that are wanting to work with us to make it viable, make it feasible for kids and sustainable. And then I have some good news. The next slide on JROTC. Effective next school year, the State Office of Career and Technical Education has created a new pathway. It's called National Security. And now JROTC will roll under as an option for career and tech ed for students to be completers. There's a lot of perks to this. We'll be able to include them within our Perkins funding. It will not change. We've already met with our JROTC instructors and principals. It will not change their parameters. They still have to follow under the Department of Defense, how they're structured and so on, but it's just going to bring them a part of a group that's already supported, and it's going to allow our students when they graduate to be able to add yet another credential of saying that, hey, I'm a completer in the national security pathway. So, and also we are looking at, which will tie into what Mr. Flowers are going to be talking about next, how do we meet the needs of those high flyers? We're going to be offering honors weighted courses through JROTC as well as the CTE advanced levels. It'll be an option, and there's a process involved by the state. And so at some time, Mrs. Robine, these applications will come to you at another time, perhaps this summer, and we'll take them as a case-by-case basis. But we're excited to build that capacity with different levels to meet different students' needs. And then lastly, on the last slide, for the, it's all about what are our outcomes. We started out with the goals. So are we moving students in these areas? Are we helping our students if they're wanting to go to college? Are they meeting those cutoff scores? Are they prepared to do well in college? If they're going on into the military or straight to work or on to a tech school, are they prepared? And so we feel like by having these programs in place, we continue to collaborate. We feel like it's going to set us on a good path over this next 5-year period. We have a lot of work to do, but I'll stop there. And again, my apologies, but thank you for bearing with me.
Thank you, Karen. Let's see. Colonel Geyer's hand is up.
Thank you, Karen. Bless your heart, sticking with it. I admire your persistence and perseverance. I got a couple questions I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
It's been a while since we've gotten current enrollment by school and specialty. We don't have the data on this second semester, and that would be very interesting to have. Plus, when you've shown all the future programs, how about come up with some numbers? What do you think the numbers would be in each of those future programs? And then tell us how you came up with the numbers. Where did those numbers come from? Because obviously we have to know what we got to do some design work at the May River High School for the next referendum to build what you need. And we need to know pretty darn soon what we're going to build. So, secondly, we need to really look to the future. And I'm going to tell you a little story. In the year 2000, I was at a community college and charge of facilities and so on. And an instructor came in and told me he needed a new photo lab with chemicals, dark rooms, and all that other stuff. I said, no, you don't. Digital cameras are going to take the place. Oh, no, they'll never be able to do it. The auto industry is going to change significantly. If you haven't heard, California says by 2030, they're not going to allow any but electrical vehicles sold. An electrical vehicle car shop is not going to look like what we're building now with pits and oil change and ignition systems and fuel tanks and all this other stuff. It's entirely different. And the demands are going to be entirely different. So I'm saying, let's look ahead more than just 2 or 3 years for technology and where it's going. And let's not build a dinosaur. Like if I would have put that photo lab in there, it would have been a dinosaur. But just look at that, think about what we're doing. I think you're on the right track. I think you've got the computer science, all the other good stuff in there, but look at expensive systems and make sure that we aren't building something that's going to be outdated in a few years. Okay.
You're spot on, Colonel Geyer, and I will get to Dr. Stratus and the board the current enrollment for the by school and by content area. As far as the projected numbers, that is actually a great question. That'll come from this local needs assessment. That is part of the breakdown for that, so we can certainly get that. And I love your analogy of the photo lab. You're spot on. We have an advisory member who is in the automotive industry, and I love to hear him talk about where this is going. And so you're exactly right. The design has to be very forward thinking on that. So we'll definitely keep that in mind. Thank you, sir.
Get better.
Mel Campbell.
Yeah, Karen, when you list enrollment, what do you mean?
Yes, sir. So
current enrollment.
Yes, sir. I pull out of Power School. So that Those numbers came in December. So it was right before second semester occurred. And I pulled it directly out of PowerSchool. I like to use pivot tables, and it's just the course enrollment number per each of the teachers, per each of the CTE courses. So you might have, and that was for the full year. So the numbers that you saw for Hilton Head, that was fall and semester. It may have fluctuated a little bit had I pulled the numbers into January, because they tweak it a little bit for second semester. But it's actual course enrollments. There might be a little duplication. For example, if I'm a student in Intro to Hospitality in the fall, I might take Culinary 1 in the spring of the same year. So you could take that if you needed by individual student count, we could get that for you. I do say that we're serving the students if they're taking 2 courses each year, but I can get you individual numbers on that. Does that help?
That the enrollment, particularly differ from the middle school enrollment, and that the students who are enrolled are typically going to those classes more than one time per week. Is that correct or no?
No, sir. I helped to change that when I came on board. It is they take a course code. They're assigned to it for the semester. And now the scheduling, master scheduling varies a little bit from the 8 middle schools. But when we pull it in PowerSchool, it's the students are in that class for a semester, supposed to be 5 days a week to meet the minimum of hours of instruction, but it's different from what it used to be several years ago. It's by course now.
Well, yeah, I just typically I want to know how many times those teachers, those students are in front of those teachers. You got, I roll it back. Someone, Robin, can you roll it back to Hilton Head, for example? And right there, yeah. You got 9 teachers, you said, that are totally certified. So teachers probably take, some teachers teaching coaches that they're not certified in. But typically you got 1,395 enrollments.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, connotate to 5 times 1,395 per teacher?
Yes, sir. That's what I'm saying. We would like to see an increase in staffing for CTE programs at Hilton Head. Those courses tend to be high.
Yeah.
Culinary, just due to the safety factor, we try to keep it down to 20 to 25 tops because it's a small area footprint. But you're right, sir. The hospitality and tourism, the marketing classes, those are they're always at capacity. Yes, sir. But that's 1,395 enrollments that those 9 teachers are touching. Yes, sir.
Right.
Good question.
That's unreal. I've got some other questions, but I'm going to save them for next time.
Okay.
Karen, do we have, you didn't touch on this and it might not be under your purview, although I think it is, a career development facilitator at each of our high schools. Unique one, not shared, but each one.
Yes, thank this board. I thank the board, Dr. Stratus, and our HR so much for continuing to advocate for that. The principals received the good news, and they, as a matter of fact, they're posted now for May River and for Well Branch too. So that was a nice surprise. So thank you, Ms. Robine and the board for continuing to support that, and Ms. Crosby as well. We appreciate it.
Okay. Mel, did you want another question now, or are you going to save it for a future time?
If I have time, I can ask another question. Is there some consideration for students who may want to take a course, a CTE course that's offered perhaps at Hilton Head, and that person might very well be at Battery Creek? I mean, is there anything planned in the future where we can get not only the kids who have the desire to take courses that are not offered at their schools, but also have the ability, you know, and you know, in my mind, I'm thinking exam entry for these courses, where students are basically middle school oriented, but we want to make sure they have the like and the aptitude for health science.
Are you referring, Mr. Campbell, to almost a CTE choice type of program?
Yes.
Where would the student, say if they wanted to take welding at May River, but they still wanted to stay with their feeder high school? Is that what you're thinking about?
Well, even if they won't have to move to May River to take it, I mean, which will mean transportation, et cetera, or whatever the design would be to accommodate that student's need and desires.
Yes, sir. So right now, as part of our choice program, and Dr. Stratus, you can certainly chime in, we have a lot of these CTE pathways already part of the choice application. So that is there. Obviously, it would fall under capacity of the school overall,
Yeah.
but that is definitely something that we can look at.
Well, yeah, I'm saying also because May River may very well have children who are taking the choices that are there because that's what's being offered, and they may very well want to be at Battery Creek taking something else. And is there any long-term plan for that type of universal education in the district? Or is it still going to be, I mean, I see a lot of, you know, individual stuff there that's trying to cover all of the needs of the students in the particular schools, but, you know, I don't know whether localizing it like aviation at Hilton Head High. I mean, why not aviation for the whole county? And do we have 20 children or 30 children in the county who might be interested as opposed to 10 at Hilton Head High? I'm concerned about that.
Yes, sir.
I'm concerned about where we're going.
Yes, sir.
For the future.
Maybe this will help. And thank you so much. I like where you're driving that. So if you go back to looking at it, clusters, and in my world, it's not just about student interest. It truly is where labor market demand needs are, critical needs are. So if you go back to Ms. Cushenberry to the first slide, please, where we talked about the expectations. Keep going back. One more there. So we hope that over the next 5-year plan that all schools have a healthcare focus, so they don't have to go off somewhere. We want all schools to offer solid business courses as well as IT and computer science. Okay, if those are our 3 main areas that we feel like any student, regardless of their path, would benefit from. As far as welding or the specialty programs that Colonel Geyer had mentioned as well, of being mindful of that can change dramatically over a time period, and the labor market needs. We can't offer, like you said, everything to everyone given the existing footprint. That's where, in my opinion, ACE and the value of ACE comes in, to be able to work within our all 6 high schools for that, and what's going to be their future and what that looks like. And again, that'll be with Dr. LeVecchio at the table for that. But I appreciate what you're saying is we just need to be mindful of equity and access, and that if there's a student that really, really wants something that lives in a different zone, how can we make that happen? So I'll put that on the list. Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Our role should be getting the best out of the student resource that we have, and if we can match that aviation student with the program that he deserves to have because of his aptitude, I think we should make all efforts to do that.
Yes, sir.
If that's his desire. And a lot of these courses, I know students, if they saw that whole smorgasbord, they'll be picking things that are not in their schools.
Yes, sir.
And,
Makes sense.
yeah, right. At the current rate, we can't accommodate that. But I think we'll be misleading if we don't look at finding a way to accommodate that, whether it's to free up spaces at these schools that are offering them, or finding a central place like ACE or something like ACE that offers these courses that is an appeal to the entire Beaufort County cluster as opposed to just one cluster.
Yes, sir. Point taken.
Thank you.
Dr. Stratos, I see you raising your hand.
And just a quick comment regarding the dual enrollment CTE course opportunities, and that is an area of growth as well. So not only ACE, but seeking to increase our partnership with TCL, looking at greater opportunity of opening applications as well as eligibility. We're having those conversations as well. Karen, do you want to speak a little bit to some of the conversation that we've had at the table with TCL and with the principals?
Oh, yes. So definitely you're going to see an increased marketing push. TCL has hired on many new great folks. With the healthcare, Dr. Stratus and I are in partnership with one of our major healthcare providers that's going to be pushing out an announcement soon, and they want to duplicate the model as well. That's going to involve a pipeline of CNA to LPN to nurse to then CMA. It's exciting that it's going to lead out, and it's involving all of us at the table with TCL as well as USCB. Same thing with the cyber. Again, I was blown away with the cyber summit and how they're already connecting with how can we parlay a network or an engineering or a cyber plus 1 year certificate to help that person push into a decent paying job and then continue on with a computer science degree if they want to through USCB, which is really ramping up their ability, their course offerings as well. So as Dr. Stratus said, you're gonna see a huge focus on that, not only just here in Beaufort County, but within my other colleagues too, regionally.
Okay. All right, we are on a little bit of a time thing here. I do want to conclude by no later than 7 o'clock to honor my committee members. And I appreciate all the hard work that your group has done, Dr. Stratos, and the conversation revolving around the questions. But at this point, I think we're ready to segue into the others. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. I hope you're feeling better.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So at this time, Mrs. Cushenberry, if we can go to slide 31, I'd like to bring forward, you may know him as Robert Flowers, but Nicholas Flowers, our Director for Elementary Teaching and Learning. Nick, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. So this evening, I get the opportunity to talk about Gifted and Talented for the district. And so one of the things for our Gifted and Talented program is that we really want to think about how it builds into the academics and into our arts fields. And we really want to focus on the student talent. So yes, we have that gifted and talented piece, but really having a big emphasis on a talent development piece. So we are developing our students' gifts and their talents. We understand that all students can succeed at high levels when we set the bar high. We just have to give them the supports that they need to achieve there. We really want to hone in on where our students currently are and build those talents and gifts there, and understand that there is a sense of urgency in developing these pieces for what the students need to be able to be successful into life. And as we do this journey, really break down any kind of stigmas or whatnot that go along with that. Next slide, please. So as we think about this, one of the big pieces is that as we develop our students' talents and everything, we understand that students come from all backgrounds. We need to make sure that we have a program that is fully accessible, has the equity piece in there, and that it identifies and removes all barriers so our students can be successful. When we think about education, the original premise of education was really based off of that medical model where we identify students, we label the students, and we develop a plan of action. But as we think about really this 3 to 5 year lens that we're putting forward, we really want to move to more of what we would call the human capability theory. So we want to really hone in on the capabilities of our students and use their strengths to overcome any potential deficits that may exist there, to use what the student is capable of doing to overcome any kind of weakness or whatnot, to really develop then those talents that the student has. As we do this, we really need to identify the gifts early. So as Ms. Hutchison put forward kind of that play-based model, the great thing there is that we start breaking down barriers at the earliest of ages in order then to not be labeling them and all of that, to really hone in on what are the gifts and talents that we're seeing early on, to develop those to the entire K-12 perspective. So when the initiative started really at the beginning of the year, we were kind of looking at that acceleration piece. But really, we need to think about, yes, we're accelerating within specific units and making sure we're hitting the concepts, but really kind of accelerating to go deeper, because we want to make sure from the earliest of age to when they're in high school graduating, that they have every opportunity to be successful in hitting their AP courses, IB courses, every advanced course that we can get them into, in addition to being able to hone in on the potential gifts and talents that they have for our CTE courses and leveraging those skills too. So we're truly developing the profile of a Beaufort graduate that they may not be labeled per se gifted and talented, but we are truly putting forth a program for students that highlights their gifts and talents. Next slide, please. So really where we are right now is that through the course of this year and as we move into the next school year, you know, we're really honing in to make sure that as we set forth this the talent development approach, that we have the materials and resources we need for every school, so there's no issue for access and equity to be able to receive the materials, use the materials. We want to also, we're looking at a plan of action to overcome the current barriers that we have in place. So by looking to do more of a universal identification system that gives the opportunity for us to identify students beyond just second grade. So the state, South Carolina, we start in second grade to identify, and then it kind of, we really kind of, as we go through, if we have that aspect we may do, but by doing more of a universal identification, we can hit them at other grade levels in a systematic approach to overcome any potential barriers that may exist from our various student populations. One of the things too is that we have a very diverse group of schools. So the district wants to make sure that we are supporting our schools' implementation where they are. So the programs and services may look different based on the school, but we want to make sure that they're equitable for all students, from, you know, early support that we're putting in at the primary levels, but then as we move through that, even if they're not identified, we are still providing opportunities for students to be supported that way. And then even increasing our opportunities for students who are artistically gifted and talented, or the students that have that potential to be there. We really want to make sure that we're nailing that down. The other piece is that we want to make sure that students have access to any course that they are really wanting to enter. So if they're wanting to enter an advanced course, that they're set up for success in that course, that we are setting the groundwork for them to be able to meet with their school counselors, look at potential schedules, and then they're able to enter those by having the various pieces of the puzzle and experiences that they needed early on to set that foundation. As we move forward with, you're good. As we move forward and we think about, what are we hearing from students, and, what's this roadmap really going into? We know that, we have various cohorts and approaches out there, but by honing in this work right now, and as we go through this 3 to 5 year lens, it's really allowing us to make sure that all students have a balanced and diverse classroom and approach. We are listening to the students to make sure that students aren't bored. We're not labeling them or targeting them into a specific classroom or a specific program. So we're able to adjust to really meet their needs and their unique talents and gifts that they have. One of the other approaches is that, we are currently working with USCB, that we are really working to expand teachers' opportunities to become, to receive their endorsement for gifted and talented education. But we also know that simply receiving the endorsement is not enough. So we want to make sure that through this 3 to 5 year lens, that we're developing a plan, though, to support our students and the implementation of instructional practices, curriculum materials, assessment practices that really allow them to tailor their instruction to make sure that we are developing the brightest students and the next layer of students that are coming from here. And so that PD plan, one of the pieces is that as we refresh our materials, we want to make sure that professional development is aligned then to what we're refreshing. So where we're putting our financial resources at, we want to make sure that there is support being put in place for the implementation of those materials. So that kind of concludes that gifted and talented snapshot. And as we go, I'm always happy to come back with a broader scope too.
Okay, Mr. Stribinger.
Thank you. Dr. Stratos, I just want to say I continue to be impressed by your team. After this meeting, I'm going to have, I'll go into the other room and I'm going to try to digest all the excitement from where we're headed. It's been years since I've been this excited about where we're going, and this sure that we're going to get there, because your team has got it. They're locked in.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Colonel Guyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo what David said. You've really got a team, and you've really got some real good programs. But I'd like to make a comment on the gifted and talented piece. I've got 2 grandsons that have gone through Beaufort County School District. Both took advantage of gifted and talented. And the oldest one has got over a 3-point average at Clemson in his first semester. So you prepared him well. The problem is the other one, the other grandson. The other grandson's actually brighter than, I think, than the one, his older brother. Academically, he excelled. Social and emotionally, he did not. And that's one of the problems that I see with gifted and talented programs, is we send kids, advance them rapidly academically, but socially and emotionally, it's actually worse for them in some ways, because one, they think of themselves as superior, and 2, they really don't realize how deficient they are in social, emotional activities within their peer group. They tend to try to run with an older group. And so that's one of my concerns. Now that my son's parents did a good job in grounding the young man, but still has a challenge. And so that's when I ask you to make sure that we don't just consider the gifted and talented as universally gifted and talented, because most are not.
Yes, and what's important there is as we we started out the year kind of the accelerated GT, but what we're really finding is we want to shift our focus away from accelerated to really focus on that talent development aspect, because we have these students that we start out accelerating, and then as we do post-COVID, that we want to really not have our emphasis be on acceleration, but truly developing the unique talents that are there. And another aspect is, as we think about a universal identification, we're usually very fixated on achievement scores of students. We want the achievement, but by doing a more universal approach, then we're going to have multiple times then in their career that we're going to do an aptitude assessment, which is their ability to perform high. And when you really hone in on the aptitude piece of it, you get some very unique data that can really go with tailoring the unique instruction that you're going to receive. And then the nice thing is, if potentially your achievements aren't there, but the aptitude scores are high, then we can do a performance task assessment depending on the grade level. So we're really looking more holistically. And my hope is, as we shift in this 3 to 5 years, we can overcome exactly what you identified as a true need that needs to be overcome and barrier.
The other challenge you have is the artistically gifted and talented. They tend to get put by the wayside, and the drama kids, the artists, graphic artists, the dance, and so on, the musicians, and we've got to nurture those children. They have to know that they are going to be successful. They're going to have a good life, and many of them really struggle with their peers. And so, academically, because they're just not interested. And so it takes very gifted people with are in the arts to make sure that those kids use the arts to learn the other parts of education. How does music and math relate? How does performing arts and the written word relate? So that's a challenge that I've seen not being handled very well in many schools, and we've got to make sure that we don't lose those kids.
And yes, you are spot on. And I've had strategic conversations with Ms. McKenzie, who's the director that's really leading our arts, with our fine arts coordinator. And so we are having those conversations about how do we meet the needs of our artistically gifted, both identification, but also servicing them, because the servicing of them is very limited right now. So.
Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I agree with Colonel Guy. I'm concerned probably with the other kid, though, who is a behavioral problem and somewhat gifted and talented and is overlooked. But generally speaking, our system of educating have probably lost as many of our bright minds as we've made excel, because they were tuned out early or couldn't find the challenges mentally and turned into behavioral discontented people. And I applaud your initiative, and I'm concerned with how restricted you're going to be with or is it going to be an unrestricted process in which you're not labeling them as gifted and talented per se? Because I'm concerned how restricted you're going to be with the state qualifiers.
So, Nick, before you respond, if I could just share, Mr. Campbell, you're speaking about a child very similar to myself. If you did not intellectually engage me as a student, I was a challenge. And I'll leave that commentary to what it is. So having walked that
path. Very true with a lot of our problematic children, and we just don't have the resources to grab them all and redirect them all. So that's my concern, that you might get them and they may not test very well. I think of that that movie, and very current, Will Smith.
So it's a culture shift.
Men in Black, when he was taking that test, how, innovative he was and creative he was, and, in the classroom, he would have probably been kicked out.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my concern. How do we, coordinate what we want to do versus what the state has, basically kind of directed or,
So
designed.
Mr. Flowers will bring forward information regarding the increase potentially, well, I want to say use of the Nagley area nonverbal exam that takes it to another level. And when he had commentary with regard to aptitude versus quote an IQ, let's say.
Okay.
Right. The reality of building the capacity, but we spoke about 3 cultural shifts here today, which are significant, right? One, the shift of what we recognize as a traditional kindergarten model that builds upon the existing pre-K. A second is revisiting where we're going and still looking to grow and improve upon our GT, right? So we can have students cross graduation who could have an opportunity to be financially independent. The third cultural shift is actually what Mr. Flowers is speaking to. So, and I'll let him pick up on that regarding the assessments and how to identify the problematic child, right? And keep me entertained so that I'm not making those 911 phone calls from the lobby.
Right.
Yeah, so our state sets the specific criteria for what makes a student gifted. So as we've looked at refreshing our materials and as we looked at how we're servicing them, we have never asked a school, tell us here's how many gifted students you've identified, here's what we're purchasing for you, but we are specifically saying, what is it that you need to support your students or to get them to achieve through a supported way at that high level. So we're not focused on the identification or label, it's you tell me what you need. So if you're wanting to increase reading, then junior great books is an approach. Tell me how many do you need, and ISD can get it purchased for you. So if you want to incorporate it through multiple classes, let's get this done. That way we're not letting the label solely drive what's supporting our students, but it doesn't matter if you have the behavioral thing, or if you have autism, if you have a speech impairment, any kind of barrier, we can overcome it. And the nice thing is one of the new assessments that's coming out, which is the NAGLER that Dr. Stratos spoke to, it's designed looking at the ability to perform high that overcomes cultural barriers. So there's no sound to it. There's no words to it. It removes all those barriers. So it's kind of in that final normed reference aspect for the state. But my focus is not letting the label drive what we do, but okay, let's service as many students and support them as many.
And that focus, of course, is going to be driven down to the school site, the school level.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to thank you for your presentation. I have one comment. I think that a lot of what we do with our gifted and talented can be done by through engaging in extracurriculars as well. You mentioned junior great books. I wrote that down. This weekend, a couple of us were at the Academic World Quest competition. Certainly things like that are for the academically inclined or kids that are interested in current affairs or delving in, getting them involved in some extracurricular activities like that. Offering them the opportunity, tapping them on the shoulder and say, hey, you might like this is one way to I think expand the program. So it is almost 7 o'clock, and I thank everyone for all of your hard work. Dr. Stratos, I have something that for our next meeting that Colonel Geyer had asked for before, so I'm wondering if we can make that the topic for our next meeting, and it is an update on the use of our libraries and media centers. How they're being used. Does that work for you?
Yes, it does. I know it was an earlier comment from a prior meeting, as well as a technology today. So yes, ma'am, I picked up at that.
Great. Okay. So our next meeting should be April 27th. It's the last Wednesday, April 27th.
That might not be a good day because that is the day at Columbia, at the Capitol.
The legislative folks.
So
That's right.
you probably might want to move your meeting.
Okay. How about Wednesday, May 4th?
There's nothing on there.
Other committee members, what do you think?
Dick says fine.
Okay.
Angela,
Yeah, I'll try. I definitely will try.
All good.
Mel, okay. So let's tentatively schedule it. We'll schedule it for 5 o'clock on May 4th.
Fine.
And Dr. Stratus, I want to echo the comments of Mr. Strippinger and Colonel Geyer. And thank you for the work that your team is doing. You know, our questions are meant to be expand the thinking and clarification and not, you know, sometimes I think some of my questions may be a little sound negative. I do not mean them that way. So.
With greatest respect, board members, thank you. And thank you to our team here in ISD. We recognize the growth, and even with Mr. Campbell's question on the cross, I wrote pollinating universal practice. So yes, he does open the mind to keep thinking. So I appreciate it all. Thank you.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
A great
Bye.
day. Yeah.